based on your colleague, people that come back from the war more recently than you. How do ordinary Iraqis interact with American troops on the ground?
I mean, interaction with the Iraqis is really just really one of the toughest things to deal with while you're over there. I talk a lot about how when I went there, I went into Iraq with really no understanding of the people of Iraq, its culture, its politics. The only reason I knew anything going into Iraq is because I made a point of educating myself. I read a couple books about the backstory about what was going on. One was a really good book called Target Iraq, which was mostly written and edited by a gentleman named Norman Solomon, who's a great intellectual press and foreign policy. So really, and a lot of guys turned to me saying, because they knew I'd done this, like, well, what's this, what's going on here? I mean, very little of the guys knew about the 3 separate ethnic groups within Iraq. They knew little of the history, and it's really only gotten worse. Just because of this climate of fear that's really grown. When I was there, especially towards the end of my deployment in Iraq, the average Iraqi was kind of looking at us going, well, you know what? You came in here, you made a mess of the place, but let's see where this goes. You know, Saddam's gone, we got a chance here, let's see what happens next. And we blew every option we had after that, we really did. And a lot of guys say that, and really, the big key to remember now is that they talk about victory, but what's victory? You know, can anyone honestly tell me what is victory under Bush's current plan? I don't think anyone can. So that means the guys on the ground have no mission. What are they trying to do? They don't know, which means the mission becomes saving your ass, pardon my language, you know, the former Marine. But really, that's what it comes down to. It comes down to you and your buddies getting home in one piece, and you're going to do whatever it takes in order to make that happen. Flat out. That's what happens. These are the conditions that cause rules of engagement to mean less and less, to have, you know, to have these horrible actions, horrible mistakes happen more and more often. That was really one of the key points of Winter Soldier, talking about how these things fall apart.
That's your question, right? When you say that the public has their impact on national security foreign policy decisions, do you think that is just what are the factors that you think go into that? Why is it, and do you think it's something that could be overcome in the case of a particularly egregious situation?
It's not my article, so I don't want to be an expert and pontificate on the article that I'm using to draw from this. But from my knowledge of foreign policy, I think that what matters most is issue saliency. And so where the public really understands foreign policy issues tend to be mostly around economic issues. You'll see the backlash over NAFTA, and you'll see that influencing foreign policy decision making, those kinds of things. But when it comes to questions of war, the American public initially is supportive of wars. There's often a rally around. We saw this in I.V.A.W. We saw this again with this war here. And there's a real lag between when there's a public opinion in support of a war and when it finally reaches that tipping point and there's an opposition to the war. Well, we've reached that tipping point and we're not going back. And so the question is, how can Democratic politicians or anti-war politicians understand this tipping point has been reached, and now an opposition to the war is in fact the majority viewpoint, right? It is the dominant viewpoint, and so it seems that that's the task now, is to understand that this tipping point's already been reached, and the Republicans, I think, suffered in 2006.
Well, they did. The Democrats won the election in 2006, and yet over and over again they've been rolled by President Bush on votes to cut off the funding. What's that all about?
I think there's a number of things. I think, a lot of people in the Democratic Party need to grow a backbone. One thing I said in the speech is, you know, what ended Vietnam was not some great, vote that said we're ending this war now. No, they just stopped paying for it is what it came down to. And every time, the Democrats had to push something through, and Bush said, well, this is for the troops and we need to pass this, they fold. Enough Democrats fold every single time to get this stuff to keep passing. And that, I think, is really the problem. And, to me, I'm political, but I'm also, the political outsider. So it's really frustrating to me seeing, and I think it's kind of directed towards you because you've been in this more than I have, this constant problem of this disconnect between us and them, between us, the people, and those we elect to represent us, and how they keep doing this to us.
Well, I just think this has been a remarkable, it's been very skillfully done by the Bush White House, injured as they are in so many ways, to make the members believe that they will suffer politically, that they will be seen as not supporting the troops if they cut off the funding for the war. Meanwhile, the most outrageous veterans policies in the history of the United States are going on. It's the Bush administration that's not supporting the troops. The idea that people give their lives or that they give their bodies and they give their ability to, in so many ways, interact with the world the way they did before they went to the war, they come back and they are treated horribly. They don't have adequate medical facilities. They don't have adequate care. Some people in the service say, oh, post-traumatic stress syndrome, that's for babies. We don't have that in our service. The treatment of our veterans by this administration when they say they're so pro the troops is just one of the most appalling things I've ever seen in all the time that I've been working. So however they've got this spun politically, it is a remarkable feat when you compare it to the facts, and it's something that I find just almost shocking.
Well, one thing that to me is really disturbing about the question about veterans care, and that's something that means a lot to me as a disabled veteran with PTSD, as well as a couple other minor things. And I have friends who are much worse shape than I am. But what really gets me about the veterans care thing, and it's almost like a placebo that's put forward. There's some days I almost think that Bush is trying to gut veterans health care to keep the attention away from the fact that he's creating more screwed up vets. If you talk to anyone in the medical profession, if somebody's dying from a heart attack and they have a paper cut, what are you going to do? You're going to treat the heart attack before you treat the paper cut. We've got to look at the cause of all these veterans coming on. We've got to staunch the flow. And we have to stop this from happening to anyone else. And then we can, I'm not saying we stop looking at veterans health care for now, but really the best way to fix the crisis in the VA is stop making more disabled veterans.
I'm going to ask if each of you can give us a few closing thoughts, and then we'll take some questions for everyone. So maybe if you want to start the other way.
Sure. I think that my closing thoughts, to return back to political science a little bit, is I think that and for Democrats, I think that this is a question of framing, and it's a question of reclaiming the mantle of national security. It's a question of how skillfully can politicians link the economic and domestic concerns with the foreign policy concerns. I really think this is a moment where it's right for a Democratic Party to make these connections, but it requires skillful leadership to be able to do this. I don't think of Bush as a great, master of rhetoric. So if they can spin national security one way, I think that there's the possibility of Democrats to sort of make these connections and understand these things and build this.
I don't really have anything to say as a real believer in democracy. I think all of you should have more time to talk, so you have my time.
That's what I was going to say. My closing thought is let's just have a discussion, and what you have to say is